Hey, Marci. I can't even begin to tell for how long I've been waiting for this recording because you're someone truly special who can share a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge for some very important topics that are interesting for all the contact centers, but especially for us planners out there. But before we kick off, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thank you, Irina. So my name is Marci Peters, and I live in Toronto, Canada. And I currently am the head of growth slash fractional integrator for the drawing specialists, which is located, they're actually located outside of Toronto, but I work remotely. So that's amazing. And so I basically just bring all of the sales, marketing, customer success teams together so that we're all on the same page and we're all aligned on our goals. And I just keep things moving. And I have more than 20 years of experience leading call center teams and transforming call center teams. So that's my passion, and it's just something that I love to do.
And this is a perfect way to kick off the discussion. And I'm just a little bit curious, based on your extensive expertise in that area, what do you think about the current state of contact centers?
Well, I think that, the pandemic certainly shook things up, whereby, it created awareness that we can work from home successfully. And so that, 10 years ago, I never would have thought about that. Although, when during my time at Touch Bistro, because we had a 24/7 team, we did allow our staff overnight to work from home because for safety reasons, for security reasons. We didn't want them traveling on the subway at night, walking at night by themselves. So we allowed them to work from home. But now everybody can work from home, and that is the great thing about contact center technology, is that it can be easily done because you can manage people from anywhere and they can be working anywhere.
And it's a very interesting topic because when the whole pandemic happened, this is something that was absolutely scaring every single contact centers and was making the life of planners much more difficult. How to plan people from home, or when we were returning back to the office, how to plan enough people in the office versus enough people at home. So it was a whole new ways of working. But this contributes to another topic that I'm really interested about. And from your experience, I would like to ask you, we usually, from planning perspective, struggling often getting across our message for our work to contact center managers, and we're often wondering how to handle those conversations. What is it essentially that the contact center manager want to see from their planning teams?
Well, the way that I look at planning teams or workforce management teams, I really do look at them as a partnership, look at it as a partnership, because they are there to support the contact center in every aspect of reporting, scheduling, compliance, just accuracy across the board, and also insights. Insights are incredibly important and helpful for contact center managers. I remember back in the day when I worked in a large contact center, and we didn't really, I mean, we had a scheduling team because it was a 24/7 team, but they weren't really providing insights. They gave us access to reports and things like that, but we had to do all the work ourselves. And so I had a team of about 30 people, and at the time our staff were mostly part-time, so I also was responsible for their payroll. So every 2 weeks I had to, I had to check their timesheets and check it against my login, log out reports and make sure that they were accurate. So it was extremely time consuming, and along with, meeting with them for their one-on-ones and having all of the statistics that I needed to speak to them, their KPIs and their results. But I was the one pulling all of that. I was the one doing all the work, as were all of my peers who were also leading teams. And later on, working for the same company, they brought in a workforce management team. And the workforce management team made my job so much easier because I could focus on my teams, on my people, on coaching, on helping them to grow in their roles and develop, and as opposed to running reports and analyzing reports and doing all of those things. And the other thing too, my teams were at this time, they were back office teams. So if our front end call center got slammed with calls, they would come to me and say, okay, we need to move you guys on the phones to help out with the volume. And so, but they would manage all of that. They would change the skill levels, and they would change all of the things that needed to happen so that my team could jump on and help out. And it was just from a team leadership perspective, it just made my life easier. And that's the way that I look at a workforce management team. They're there to support, they're a partner. And in my role at Touch Bistro, we took it one step further, and our workforce management administrator, he also was empowered for innovation, right? To find new ways of doing things, or to bring things to our attention that maybe we weren't looking at. And so he would dig into the numbers, he would dig into the stats, and he would come back to us and say, hey, I've noticed these things. I think we should do this. And he would make recommendations. And that's how I view a workforce management team. It's a partnership. And I, whenever I'm, leading a large team, I appreciate it, right? Because it's just one thing that I don't need to worry about, but I know they're taking care of the business.
I remember from our previous conversation, you mentioned something that stuck with me, and it was something in the lines of WFM teams or planning teams should allow team leaders to be team leaders, and they should
Yeah.
take away everything else that is basically in the way for team leaders to do what they're supposed to be doing, which is
Yeah.
helping their advisors. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember in that first contact center role that I mentioned, where I had 30 people reporting to me, I was a busy person, so not only, managing them as people, but also, I had to listen to their calls every month, and I had to do all of these things. And so taking away the administrative piece and the reporting piece and having somebody else do that was incredibly appreciated, so that I could really focus on my people and helping them to be the best that they could be.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the administrative part, because I fear that often WFM teams are mostly regarded as administration, which is completely the wrong way to look at their function. As you mentioned, they need to bring the insights, but they also need to
Yes.
be able to say or translate the insights into a story that makes sense for the other
Yes.
stakeholders.
I love that, the story.
Yes, and that's
Yes.
something that for
Yes.
me it's lacking in a lot of the situations with planners, and I feel like often they're unable to basically bring the level of detail needed, whether it is towards team leaders or quality monitors or contact center managers. So I was curious, what do you think might be lacking, or what can we do better in order for you to understand where we're coming from in a better way?
I don't know if it's doing something better. I think looking at it from your perspective, I think it's just getting that buy-in and being able to show the leadership team, how you will add value to the day-to-day jobs of the call center leader, to the call center director, and showing those insights. And in when I was working at Touch Bistro, our workforce management person fell under what we called client success optimization. And so under that umbrella, we had workforce management, but we also had the administrator of our contact center software, and we also had data analysts. So they all kind of worked together to, to create one team, and training was also under that as well. And they all worked together to really provide that value from all aspects, right? You've got your, your reporting, your insights, and scheduling, as well as making sure that everything's working the way that it should. So if our workforce management manager noticed something off, he could speak to the contact center software administrator, and they would make the changes in the software that needed to be made. And so it was just very it was a very cohesive team that really provided that support within the contact center. Like, they were the foundation that allowed us to be successful.
I love that. And that way of working together as one team is ultimately what will make the operation successful.
That's
or
right.
not.
Yeah.
Because working.
And my workforce management manager was also empowered to coach our frontline employees. So if he noticed that, maybe they weren't using the right you know codes when they would log out of the system, he could speak to them and say, hey, I've noticed this, just, make sure that this is happening, so that, it's not being marked against you. Or, just letting them know so that they could get back on track. And it was just support. It's supporting the leaders so they can do what they were hired to do, which is, really, lead the people and take care of their teams.
I love that. And one thing that I keep on hearing on a consistent, regular basis from a lot of planners out there is, unfortunately, they feel that they are not heard by senior management, and they don't feel like the insights they are bringing to the table are actually taken seriously. And it opens the conversation whether senior managers are understanding the importance of planning teams, or whether the planning teams is able to actually get that buy-in, as you mentioned. And I was curious to hear from you, from your position being on the management part, what do you think it's like, or what can we do to make that buying easier? Like, what is that tip to being heard better, maybe?
I do think that, I started as a call center rep. So I've worked my way up through the last, 20 plus years to where I am today. And so I've done it all pretty much. And so I understand. And you're right. There will likely be, senior leaders maybe who don't understand, that don't see the value. And I think that is, you mentioned it earlier, telling the stories, right? I think putting it into a story to show them how you're going to add value. I think that is one way that you can really illustrate that return on investment of what, the value that a workforce management or a planning team will add. I think also, obviously stories are important, but also the numbers, right? That's what they care about. They care about the numbers. So if you can, again, it's like kind of showing them, telling them the story, but using numbers to do that, right? And so that, I think it's just, for me, because I see the importance, it was never a doubt in my mind that it was something that would help us. But, I mean, you could even do case studies. You could even do getting referrals from other contact centers that you've helped, so that, they can kind of see that value. But I think it's really just telling them the story through the numbers, and that, and how by doing that, they can, improve their metrics. They can improve their customer satisfaction, improve all of the things that, that they care about. Because if it's important to them, then it's going to be, that it will likely be important to their bosses. So it's just showing them that value so then they can say, oh, wow, this is really helpful, and, give me more, show me more. And that's, I mentioned that on that team when I was working at Touch Bistro, we had a data analyst, and she would dig into client accounts and come up with these amazing stories to tell, senior leadership about, what was working, what wasn't working, where were the challenges. And because she did such a great job in doing that, it allowed us to, kind of pause and then decide about the changes that we needed to make in the business. So it's really just, working together as a planning team to provide that return on investment that will matter to senior leadership.
I think you explain it in such a good way. And one thing that I'm always telling the teams that I'm working with, career progression is always a very sensitive topic. And I keep on explaining the same message due to the mistakes I have made in my career. Don't bury yourself with tasks that makes no impact. Do and work on things that bring value to operations. So what is your opinion on that?
Oh, I agree. And, when it comes to growth and development, I'm a huge supporter of growth and development for all of my people, and always have been. And when it comes to the planning team or the workforce management team, I think we had talked about before, those team members maybe not feeling that they had a growth path. And I don't think that I don't think that has to be the case. I think that, you could have, you know, I mean, whether you call them real-time management or workforce management or whatever you want to call them, intraday. I think that, there can always be different layers, right? I talked about the team we had at Touch Bistro. We had workforce management. We had the contact center software administrator. We had training. So even within that team, there were opportunities for people to move around if they so chose to. But I mean, taking somebody who is on a planning team, I mean, for me, I look at logical growth paths, and I think, well, why not finance, right? They're always wanting insights, and that's something that they care deeply about, especially when it comes to, the bottom line. But you have to look beyond, I think, the role and look at the people and what they bring to the table. And then also, as a person in that role, let's say they're a member of the planning team, they also need to be able to decide where they want to go and speak to their leaders about that, and so that they can help them hopefully get there. And so I think it comes down to, you know, being self-aware and knowing what you can add, and looking at the other opportunities that are available within the company. But I'm also a big believer of, if somebody's in a role and they're doing an amazing job, I'll promote them to a senior member of the team. So and maybe we bring in somebody else that they can mentor and support under them. But I'm always looking for opportunities for growth for my team. And I would hope that most leaders are doing that, because, I think about where I came from and where I started, and I certainly appreciate all of the guidance and mentorship that I received over the last 20 plus years.
I love that you're saying that, and I fully agree with you. I think the opportunities are endless, regardless of the size of the organizations. There are so many roles in which you can go, and even if you stay in the same role, you can always get more out of it. And one thing that I would maybe advise planners out there is to not rely only on their leader to come and tell them, oh, you're doing an incredible job, would you like me to promote you? But to actively look for actually, what can we
Yes.
do? I want to become a manager, or I want to become this, or I want to become that. What do you think I need to work on? And work with their leaders to achieve that. And this is
Yes.
something that I feel like a lot of people are a little bit passive and waiting for the opportunities to come to them rather than actively going to pursue them.
Yeah. I always say that you don't need to have the title to be a leader.
I love that.
Anybody can be a leader, right? And and so you just have to kind of look within yourself. Is that something you want to do? Because leadership is also not for everybody.
Mhm.
But if that's something that you're passionate about, then I always like to look at great leaders that I've had, and I exemplify their traits, their behaviors. And that's, I think, that's easy to do, right? Think of all the great leaders that you've had in your career, and what was it about them that made them great, and being able to adopt those behaviors and those traits. But I think that anybody who wants to be a leader, that's something that you can start doing today, right? And it's just in the job that you're doing, right? Like you want to be a role model. You want to be somebody that people come to for, when they have questions about things. So you're known as the subject matter expert. And you're also, passionate about what you do, and you're responsible, and you're honest, and you're genuine, and you're all of those things that make you a great candidate for leadership.
Such a great advice, and every single point is so important. And I'm so happy to finish on such a positive note. Before we do that, any last words of advice to planners or to WFM teams in general?
I would say, what, know your value, know what you bring to the table, and show that in those stories, in those and that's how you will gain the trust of your leadership teams.
Thank you so much for that conversation, Marci. It was absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.